Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome once again to the Karen Bashford Empowerment Mentor show, specifically with reference to the Sloth or Beaver toolkit, an intuitive, excellent, holistic toolkit that really helps people but find their way back to decent conversations to try and find out the ways they can help themselves rather than having that help imposed upon them. It's a discovery toolkit. It asks questions of yourself. It asks you to think about things perhaps from a different angle, but more about that later. Today's topic of conversations is in fact about improving your conversations, and specifically with reference to Sloth or Beaver. So what do we mean by this, Karen? And
Well,
welcome.
thank you. I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday, and one of the comments was, how does Sloth or Beaver help? And as we have had loads of discussions, because of the way it asks questions, it actually makes you think. And even in taking time to answer the questions, you're automatically changing how you respond. And as you go through the many questions, you start to realize that your response to other people changes. You tend to slow down.
Right.
You think more.
Yes.
And you don't just automatically say da 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 and end of story. You actually think, even if it's only subconsciously, before you respond.
Right. I think it's because it's possibly less polarizing. The questions in the Sloth or Beaver toolkit tend to be open.
Yeah.
They're not, is it this or this? It's very much, throwing it over for you to discuss, but also to ponder. And I think pondering is a long lost skill, absolutely a long lost skill. So, would you say that Sloth or Beaver is particularly in place to foster those kind of skills to make you question not just yourself, but the environment you find yourself in?
Well, the aim of Sloth or Beaver when I first created it was to enable people to actually look inwards and see what's really going on for themselves.
Right.
However, obviously, if you're doing that and you're doing it in a group session, so there can be 6 people within the group without a facilitator who tends to control unnecessarily at times.
Yes.
Because it is so open and anyone can say, oh, well, I disagree with that, or, oh, I didn't realize that. It actually allows for you to start realizing that what you truly think is not necessarily the best thing for you. And therefore, unintentionally, Sloth or Beaver actually creates better connections.
It's certainly from my experience of it so far, and we've only worked with it. I know, I think it's 6 times now, so there's plenty more to do. It's for me, it's a kind of like a never-ending participation. I leave it, whereas we have a green baize that's in, so we wrap it up in the green baize and we put it in the corner and we get it back out again. We finally encouraged one of my best friends, Joe, and to come over, and we're going to have a session. I'm kind of both. I'm kind of full of trepidation in a way, because she's had an uncomfortable past, which has involved issues that were. I'm not going to go into detail here, but there are issues for her to work through, and I believe it may bring up all sorts of things, and it's going to be me and Heather there. So we're fully aware that we need to sit back and almost let it flow. And I think that's one of the things. The conversations Sloth or Beaver promotes can have uncomfortable elements in them, and I think you need to square that away with yourself up front. Yeah, there was a conversation I had with a relative recently who needs support, and I said I'm more than happy to support you. Do you want to talk about it? And she said, absolutely, as long as we don't mention this or this, and we don't talk about that or the other, everything else is fine. And I said, but what you're doing there is stopping any ability for us to try and find a way through this, because you've already compartmentalized everything. So we can only talk about the easy stuff, like what flowers do you like and what do you fancy to eat. That's fine. That's nice and easy. That's very anodyne. But as soon as you want to talk about, so how do you feel? No, that's a trigger. So the conversations Sloth or Beaver promotes are ones that I don't think can afford to be shackled, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely not. And the thing about Sloth or Beaver, the way it's designed is you never know the questions you're going to get, because it depends on which card you pick up, obviously.
Absolutely. Well,
So
which kind of replicates life. You've got no idea. You may think that you're in control, but everything else that's out there that isn't in your control, it's just waiting to drop a new idea on you.
Yeah. And the thing about it is, from my own personal experience, yes, it takes courage to answer some of the questions, or a lot of the questions, depending on your background. However, the way it's done is to, even if you don't want to talk about it, there's something before the question generally,
right,
that can be a topic of conversation.
Right.
So they don't necessarily have to answer the actual question. They can answer the topic that the question relates to. So in some ways, they're still talking about what the problem is, or what the question asks the answer for, but not in a way that makes them feel so vulnerable that they feel really awkward. However, vulnerability is a bonus.
Yes.
And I've been badly hurt by relationships. And I am the first to say now that if I'd known that being vulnerable would be a benefit, I would have been vulnerable, because my life would have been different.
Right.
And the trouble is, we have a tendency to just try and hide our feelings away. That does not work. At some point, your body goes, I can't keep hiding these. I wouldn't have gone through necessarily a nervous breakdown if I'd actually allowed myself to be vulnerable. I wouldn't have had the cancers I've had if I'd allowed myself to be vulnerable. So our health actually relates considerably to how willing we are to be open to feeling and being vulnerable. So every time we turn around and say, I'm not talking about this subject, we're actually creating an element in our body that goes, oh, here we go again. Right. I can't do what I need to do to release this. So I'm just going to keep building up and up and up to the point where it's a case of, I will create cancer. I will have a nervous breakdown. I will have a heart attack, because that is what our body does in the hope of getting our attention to deal with the emotional issues we refuse to deal with.
Right.
That's a bit deep.
No, do you know what? I'm with you. I'm with you. I think it's a hard one, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But what you do not realize is, even just opening the door a bit to a question that allows you to face what you don't want to face can change your life, literally change your life.
Right.
And whilst we might not like change, change is always a benefit, never a loss.
The trouble with change, the very nature of it means you're pitching into the unknown.
But you're living in the unknown.
Yeah, but you don't think you are.
But you are, because every second is an unknown event.
Yeah.
So how can you say, if I open this door, I'm entering the unknown, when you're already in the unknown? It's just that consciously you're having to go through that door.
Yeah.
Rather than doing it totally subconsciously, living your life. That's the only difference.
See, the thing is, hear me out with this. The only way a lot of people, and I think I can put myself in that bracket too, can exist is with the illusion of control.
So if you want the illusion of control, you have an option whether you actually choose to answer that question or avoid it.
But my perception, or many people, I'm unintentionally talking for other people. I shouldn't really do that, right? My perception is, if I can somehow control my environment to a certain extent, then it's safe. But if I then am fully aware that in fact I can't control my environment and that anything could walk around the corner that I wasn't prepared for, that creates uncertainty and hence panic.
Okay, so if you're going to put it that way, if you consider you open your front door and walk through the front door out into the street, yeah?
Yes.
What are you going to find as soon as you open that front door? You have no idea.
Not a clue.
So are you living an illusion or deceiving yourself?
Deceiving myself, 100%. No, you're quite right. I am absolutely deceiving myself.
So how can you say you're safe? Because the instant you open that door, you're unsafe, because you cannot predict what is behind that door.
Yes.
And that's what you're trying to do. That is what your conscious mind is trying to do to keep you safe, is to predict what's behind that door. But it can get it wrong, drastically wrong, because we know that once the mind starts on something, it'll keep working on it, creating more and more anxiety.
Okay.
That's the illusion. You are creating anxiety.
Right.
Not the reality of what's really behind that door, which is usually just opening the door and stepping out into a beautiful sunny day or rain. You've got a choice.
Welcome to Britain, yeah. So let's go back to the topic. Better conversations sparked by Sloth or Beaver, and that's probably because the questions are open, and as you say, you don't have to actually answer the question. You could use the topic that it raises to give your own thoughts and go as deep as you want to go.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, because you are now, as you say, pondering, you will create better questions when you're talking, or even conversations when you're talking to someone else, because you've already started to change how you perceive yourself, your life, and what you want in your life.
Okay. Well,
so it creates better conversations.
All right. So I'm going to curtail this because I want to do a little bit of promotion here. If you want to find out more about Sloth or Beaver, there's a link down the bottom. In fact, I'm going to make it even easier for you. You'll change the logo in the corner to include a QR code. So either scan it or type that in and go and visit slothodbeaver.com. there are a number of different. How many different versions are there?
6.
6 different versions. The board that is based around, which is a loose guide because it represents your life path, is there's one of those. But there are 6 sets of cards that can go with it. So don't feel that you're restricted if you get any one of particular one. You can always come back for more. The base price, I think, is £75 for
£75 for the board and 1 set of cards, and you get to choose which set you want. So Absolutely. It's what you feel is most important in your life at the moment.
So don't feel like you're restricted. If you get that, if you get one, which is, what's the name of a card? I'm thinking a card set.
Life. There's a life set. Life,
and then if you want to go for money mindset, you can always get that later down the line. Don't feel restricted. I think for families that really want to explore their own family dynamic in the safety of their own home, where they are not being judged, they are just supporting each other and wanting to find better conversations throughout, Sloth or Beaver Toolkit could be an excellent way of getting that going. It could be a wonderful birthday present or Christmas present. I do recommend that. The other thing is I want to point out, Karen also works on a one-to-one basis. If you want to start that kind of relationship, why don't you have a look at the KarenBashford.com website and find out a little bit more. You encourage initial conversations, don't you, to try?
Of course, yeah.
Absolutely. And that will cost you nothing. A bit of time and hopefully a bit of eye-opening. So do have a look at slotholbeaver.com and also KarenBashford.com. Karen, do you want to take us home and then I'll sign off?
Remember that you always have a choice.
Ooh, it's so true. Don't think that you're trammeled into a corner. There's always a choice. Always a choice. All right, until next week, keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars and try. Look after your mental health. And I'll tell you what, one way of encouraging those fulsome conversations that make you feel that you've really eaten a proper meal rather than a snack around the edges is to look at the Sloth or Beaver Toolkit, slotholbeaver.com. Thank you so much for taking the time out today to be with me, Karen, and to all of you out there. I look forward to speaking to you next week. Bye-bye now.
Bye.